Hello and welcome to another edition of What Does the Giraffe Say Media with me, Kathleen Ritorne. We're an organisation that aims to connect people in conservation by holding live interviews. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Isabel Wolf Gillespie, and she is the founder of Earth Awareness. So, Isabel, if I could just hand over to you, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got passionate about conservation.
First of all, thank you so much for having me today, Kathleen. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited about being here. Welcome to our audience. Okay, so just to give you a bit of background about me, I'm originally from Germany, and I grew up there. I went to school there, but from being a little girl, I loved animals. Animals were my thing. I read every perceivable book about elephants and horses and lions and zebra, and I was always enthralled with their beauty and, just wanting to meet them personally and see them. So when I was finishing my first degree, I decided, okay, it's now or never. I need to go travel. And that's how I arrived in South Africa. And I basically never left. I arrived here. I have since got married and started a family here. And yeah, I think one thing that I felt when I arrived in this country was that there is so much that I can do for my beloved animals, for nature and the people that live here. So I really have felt that there's a need and that I could step into that. And that's sort of how it all started.
I completely understand. I know that once you've been to Africa, it kind of gets into your heart, and it's very difficult for you to ever leave or be another person again. So with your organisation, Earth Awareness, can you talk to us a little bit about your ethos and why you felt the need to start the organisation?
Of course, with pleasure. I have to go back in time a little bit. So just after I arrived in this country, about a year and a half later, my now husband and I, we went on a journey around South Africa on horseback. It was a true pilgrimage. We traveled for 19 months and we covered 7,500 kilometers. And on that journey, something happened. I went through a major shift. Some people call it the emergence of the ecological self. So it was that sense of feeling connected to the horses, to nature as a whole, and wanting to really do something about this passion that I felt so strongly. So Earth Awareness is very much my life's philosophy. It's not just an organization or a business that has objectives. It's very much how I lead my life. I truly believe in putting back in whatever capacity I can. And after coming back from this journey, I realized that I wanted to do something about the wildlife in this country. I wanted to do something that would uplift the people in this country, on this continent, actually, because since then we have, overlapped into the neighboring countries. We're no longer only operating in South Africa, we're also in Botswana. We do work, with various conservation and educational organizations, and that makes us reach out to different communities in different areas and regions.
And with what you're doing, a big part of what it is environmental education. That's a very big key pillar for you. So what needs did you identify here? And then kind of what have you seen changes in attitudes following the work that you're doing?
So some of the needs that I've identified were, firstly, in the communities living adjacent to wildlife areas, those that live often in conflict with wildlife. There was an unknowing about wildlife in the first place, how to stay safe with animals, how to deal with elephant wildlife conflict, for example, human wildlife conflict, and how to deal with elephants raiding crop fields. So I realized that people were not having sufficient knowledge about the animal as a whole. Then what I was realizing is that there was a gap in understanding the value that wildlife has to them as a community and to the global community and the ecosystems we all form part of. And I realized that, in the schools, I truly believe that environmental education at grassroots level is the key. And in the schools, I noticed that kids are being educated about, the ecosystem or about the water cycle, about those things. But what is lacking and what's missing is creating the connection on how it impacts on them personally in their lives. So that was sort of the real trigger that I noticed. That's where I can touch. This is where I can actually make an impact, because that awareness that I speak about is created through creating valuable connections with nature. So the kids, they don't just learn about environment and nature and animals, they actually get to experience it. We take them out, we take them on game drives, we show them the different species, we do art with the different species, and so you start creating a connection that's relevant. And someone many years ago said to me once, he said, Isabel, people don't remember often what you say, but what they remember is how you made them feel. And so where we tackle is when we make the children feel good about the environment, we make them feel good about nature and being part of nature, it's something they remember. And, my biggest hope is that they carry it into their adult life, and that the decisions that they make then will root from this love, that intrinsic love that I have for nature, that they have the same love for nature, and as a result make different decisions as adults.
And I think that's so key as well. I mean, for most people, it is actually going out and experiencing it and seeing the wildlife for yourself in a positive way.
Yeah.
What kind of reactions do you see from the children when you're taking them out on the game drives?
Everything. Some kids are actually really scared. So they're really scared of, elephants in particular, because they are so big, and potentially they've only had negative experiences, when they raid a field or when they walk through the village. But also complete marvel and astonishment and pure joy. I mean, sometimes they have the most, it's also wonderful to be part of it, because they have the most joy when they're just seeing impala. And we've seen so many impalas, we kind of go like, oh well, just another impala, and they go, oh, impala. And it's just that pure joy. Once you've allowed them to go through the first fear, and you hold them safe, and you make them realize that you're safe with us, and we're keeping you in a good place, you don't have to worry. Once that's subsided, they just fully into it, and then it's everything, every perceivable bird and every plant and every tree. I often go, oh my gosh, I don't even remember, let me quickly look in my book, because I don't know all the different species of it. So it is truly an amazing experience to see the world through their eyes, and it happens with every batch. Like the more kids you take in every new batch, you get this new appreciation for nature and the animals that we see and visit.
And do you find that they're then taking this back home as well? So then they're telling their family about that and trying to encourage like the older generation to be passionate about the conservation?
Certainly. I can actually tell a bit of a story around this. So one part of a program that I work with, one of the elements in the program is to have an anti-poaching ranger, speak to the children about poaching and, snaring and those kind of things. And you can see that some of the children are really conflicted, because they potentially experience how at home someone is poaching or putting snares out. And now they're being told by us and by the ranger who is working to collect the snares and is working to protect the animals, that that's actually not something good, and that we're trying to stop that. It's really hard for them sometimes to kind of find a way to marry the two. But I've noticed that some of the kids will come to me and they'll say, well, maybe they can say something at home, and then they do. I think they do share what they learn. And we're also trying to not put them in a difficult space. Like I don't go and say to them, yes, of course, go home and advocate the message of, of what we're sharing with you. I say to them, if you feel like that, if you feel passionate about animals and you want to preserve them and keep them alive, yes, of course, you're welcome to share. But I also don't want them to get into a kind of a difficult space at home. But it definitely overlaps, certainly.
And another part of what your organization does as well is it's a big promoter of sustainable tourism. So can you talk to us a little bit about this? Have you seen a change in attitude, maybe because since COVID and things like that, has that changed attitude? And if someone's watching back home and they want to ensure that their travel is sustainable, what kind of advice can you give for here?
Yeah, so I definitely think that there is a shift towards sustainable tourism. One of the key drivers, I would say, is COVID. We have a newfound appreciation of being able to be outside. I truly believe that worldwide, suddenly we have realized the value of sitting in the grass, you know, in a park, or walking through a patch of forest. And I think it is on us, those that are really working in the industry, to drive this now, to say, okay, well, there are sustainable tourism opportunities out there, and here's how you can find them. So I do think it is driven by COVID, but I also think it's driven by the new generation. You know, the newer generation has a lot more access to information when it comes to sustainability and low impact tourism, and it's about the values that they hold very dear. And I think some of those values have started to become non-negotiables. You know, they don't want to go and travel to a place where they know it is not part of the solution towards a sustainable earth. So I really believe that there is a shift. We try and driving it from our perspective, because it's also an opportunity for, you know, tourism-based revenue for communities. So like sustainable tourism equals community sustainable, low impact tourism. For me, it's very important that we look at these places that have strong community elements, that employs people from the community, that educates them. You know, many of these areas, as you will know, don't really have an industry other than the tourism industry. And, you know, we are wanting to preserve these areas. And the best way of doing that is to look at sustainable and low impact tourism. And so for people that are interested, I would ask lots of questions. You know, there's a lot of information on the internet often, and, you know, is obviously sustainable and ecotourism are big happening words at the moment. They're very they're very popular. So it's easy just to slap that on your website and say, well, I'm doing sustainable tourism. I'm operating in a sustainable tourism camp, for example. So I'd ask questions. I would dig a little bit deeper. I wouldn't just go by face value. I would actually say, hey, can you tell me a little bit more how you are practicing sustainability? Can you tell me a little bit more how you are defining ecotourism, you know? And so it's important to, I always say, ask more questions. Don't just accept what you read on the internet. Just go a little bit deeper and ask a bit deeper. And then also, you know, connect with the people running it, you know, feel into it, be intuitive, ask for their values, what is important to them. So, yeah, and also, yeah, looking for the small operators. I think the small operators, for them, it's quite difficult, you know, to sort of, especially after COVID, it's very hard to compete in this arena at the moment. And so look for those small operators. Maybe ask for contacts, you know, previous guests, can we speak to them, you know, look for that to get sort of a real life reference check on a sustainable camp, for example.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it is very easy for someone to say they're sustainable without having the actual credentials. So it is key that you actually do delve a little bit deeper, and the people aren't just greenwashing to try and get their establishment busier. I also think as well what you're saying with the next generation, I agree with you that it seems that they're a lot more aware. So beforehand, you know, it still happens, unfortunately, but there was a lot of people riding elephants or walking with lions and all this kind of thing. But I think social media has got some positive impact. It can be negative, but it does also have the positive impact of like telling people that this is no longer okay. And I think the next generation are a lot more aware of this. Are you seeing the same kind of thing?
I certainly do. I certainly see that people are, you know, those that are making contact, their values and ethics are a lot more, they're a lot stronger, they're a lot more defined. And I do believe that can happen through the access, through the internet, through social media. There is a lot of information out there, which then makes it again on the person itself. It's important to ask those deeper questions. And I do see the shift. I mean, the people that make inquiries, you know, what they're asking for is different. So like I get inquiries, for example, recently I got an inquiry for someone wanting to bring an executive team to a real wilderness camp that was off the grid, to create that connection, to make them realize that their business is actually based on the availability of resources. If you think about it, all industries, all businesses in this world are based on the availability of natural resources. And so I thought it was a great inquiry. I was so excited because I said, yes, absolutely. Let them have a deep experience, connect with the wilderness, and realize that we're all part of it in some way or another. And that's one big thing that I think is driving this shift, this values shift, this understanding, this wanting to actually connect to that, bringing the subconscious knowing to a more conscious space. It's really amazing. It's happening, definitely.
I love that. I absolutely love your positivity. It's infectious. So you do a lot of work with communities as well. How do you make contact with people and build these connections? And then where are you seeing the gaps for you to kind of do more there?
So like the communities that I work with, so some of them are where I'm based, and where our reserve that we lease is based. So they're neighboring communities. So through that, I generally, the easiest way in I have found is actually through a school. So like I'll just rock up at the school and say, this is what we do. Do you feel like there's need for you that we get involved with you? Can we assist you in any way? We truly believe that, partnerships, strong collaborations are key in making an impact in this world. So I go through the schools. I often, ask the kids on the side of the road, and I say, hey, where do you go to school? And what do you do at school? Have you got a vegetable garden there? And then, that's sort of how it starts rolling, because then through the school, you speak to the headmaster or the headmistress, and then that gets broadened to, the chief of the community. But also then through the connections with other organizations that I already have, who then pull me in and say, can you assist us with this project? Could you assist us, designing a program for a youth event? Or, so it also happens through the connections and the partnerships with other organizations. And then, the way I sort of look at the needs is, I have found that the best way of doing that is to actually consult and ask. I don't want to come there with my assumptions and say, well, this is what I think you should be learning more of, or what you should be doing more of. So it's more a question of, what are your biggest challenges at the moment, and where would you like to, get involved, or what would you like to do? And there's always something, a school will always say, oh, we would love to have more vegetables to plant. We would love to have, let's plant some trees. And that's then where I get involved. I do also try to some degree, through some staff members, their contacts, if it's a completely new community that I don't really have access to, I often ask through someone that will introduce me and take me with. And yeah, it's important to be mindful of, culture, and mindful of, the right protocol, because there are, culturally in rural areas, there is a protocol that needs to be adhered to, and there's a different way of approaching. And it's taught me a lot about me, and it's taught me, how to really practice consultation and listen deeply to what other people feel are their greatest needs.
And how is all this funded when you're doing the game drives and you've got people working alongside you? How do you fund all of this?
So it's varied. So like the different programs, if someone brings me in on, as a program coordinator, then they have funding to run that program, and I fall under that. I try and do fundraising myself for different initiatives. I have a network that I tap into. I've got amazing friends and organizations that often say, let's donate. I've got great family friends as well. Because I'm often on my own, so we are also a voluntary or volunteer-based organization, which means the volunteers that come through, they can choose which project or what program, what they would like to support. And then I ask them to do a fundraising drive before they arrive. So then they can initiate, and then they're really involved in what they're coming to do. So, you'll get someone that says, I'm really passionate about trees. So then we say, okay, well, would you like to do some fundraising to get some seedlings? And then we go into, you know, this particular school or this particular community, and then let's do a tree planting drive. And then they have ownership of what they're bringing. You know, there's a different connection to it. So I find that works really, really well. And yeah, kindness of the people, you know, many things in kind. The reserves that I have access to, or the camps, they often donate the camp stay for the kids, or they donate a game drive. So it really is also through the tourism in the area. They also are a great supporter of our work. They really have been amazing.
That's incredible. And what sort of things are you thinking now for the future? Have you got any ideas and direction that you want to go with?
You know, it's interesting. There's, I have, this COVID year has been, well, it's almost 2 years already. It's been a really difficult year, and a really difficult time because, you know, as you know, there was no travel, there were no volunteers. Fundraising was particularly difficult for the environmental sector because it was all driven and geared towards, you know, COVID response. So I used the year to sort of study and to further myself, and have, you know, done an honors in leadership development for nonprofits, and looking at conservation leadership coaching. So like, I truly believe that more role models in the community who are conservation leaders can really drive this movement forward as well, and can really create an opportunity for their own community and their own members of the community. So I'm really looking as a future and going forward with Earth Awareness is that we become even more of a support structure and to the different individuals that show potential, that want to become leaders in this field. And through that, you know, creating leaders to follow. You know, a lot of the times I ask the kids and I say to them, well, you know, how is it at home? Do you speak about animals? And there's a different perception, you know, to animals. And they say, no, my greatest, you know, role model is my teacher at school who teaches me about this. Or they sometimes say it's you because of what you do and who you are to us. So I want to try and support more people to find their niche in hopefully conservation leadership.
That's incredible. I think it's got such potential, and I really, really hope that that you manage to do all the things that you want to do, because it's all about empowerment and building up those connections and seeing the next generation coming through and making it a better place. Okay, so I've only got one more question left.
Sure.
If you're watching back home and you'd like to put a question to Isabel, then pop it in the comments section and I will do just that. If you're watching this later and it's not live and you still have a question to ask, then please do so. Again, pop it in the comments and either myself or Isabel will be able to get back and respond to you.
Sure.
Now, it comes across that you're a very positive person, which I'm loving. And I'd love to know what your favorite success story is.
Ooh, there are many. From, you know, a child that was coming through the program at 10 years old and now 18, wanting to become a ranger and those kind of things. But I think one of the most profound success stories for me has been just before COVID, I was doing a series of elephant safety workshops in 6 different villages. And, you know, part of that elephant safety workshop was around, you know, how to deal with the conflict when they do raid crops and, you know, different mitigation methods. But also part of that was to create that link between the value of elephants to the ecosystem and why they're even there. And from that, I went into sustainability. And I want to tell a story around one of the workshops, which sort of has initially really shocked me, but then turned into a beautiful success story. So many people in those villages, they still cook with wood. You know, they haven't got electricity to the level that we have. And traditionally, it's also the best way of cooking is really on fire and with wood. And so I was trying to get a point across around what sustainability would mean. So I asked the people in the audience whether they have, you know, cook with wood at home. And they said, yeah, all of us. And my next question was, well, have you planted a tree before? And every single hand dropped in the room, and it was like dead silent in the room. So there was this, everyone uses trees every day in wood, but no one has ever planted a tree before. So I was quite, you know, that's quite even though I kind of expected it, it was quite a shock for me to realize that that's where we're at. And then I went, well, okay, so to try and understand sustainability, I wanted to know, I asked whether they had goats at home. And they said, yeah. And I said, do you slaughter a goat to eat or chickens? And they said, yeah. And I said, how often? And like once a week or once a month. And they said, and I said, well, and do they ever run out? And they said, no, because they reproduce. And then that's where the penny dropped, where they went, of course, if we never really had goats reproducing, then we wouldn't have any goats. Yeah. But we need the goats. So the same applies to trees. And then I drew the line back to the elephant, saying that even though we may not think that we need the elephant, if you looked at the greater ecosystem and the driver that tourism brings, you actually need elephants to some degree. And from that, the room was so excited because the room was filled with possibilities. Originally I was stunned and didn't really know how to deal with it because it was actually a negative outcome. And then suddenly after that, the point came across. They were keen to, how do we do this? What do we want us to do? What can we do to support this? It was an unbelievable shift because it suddenly made sense to their context. And it's not, some people might perceive that I talk down. It's not at all what I mean by that. It's more meeting where people are at and talking with context that can be related, that they can relate to. And it was really amazing how just from there's now, this person wants to be involved and they're asking me about various ways in which we can, reduce the conflict and how can they, and then some ask me, have we got work, So there's lots of ideas that have come from this. And so it's probably one of my favorite workshops. And of course, the kids, when they initiate their own recycling campaign, or when they come to me and said they planted a tree, or when they come to me and said they've harvested some of the veggies that we've planted, they're a success story every 5 minutes. But actually, it's more because they're amazing. And I just am fortunate to be part of their lives.
And I think that that's the way to do it as well, is by building those connections so then they can see how it all works, because otherwise you're just saying, elephants are great, don't harm them or whatever. But if they need to, they see the potential and the reasons, and that's what's going to actually change attitudes.
Yeah, it's so important that we meet people where they're at, and that we address things in a context that is relatable. It's the same with kids in a more developed world, in a first world world. It also is totally pointless to say, well, you need to protect elephants. They go, well, they don't even live where I live. So like you really, if you, one of the biggest things that I have learned throughout the years is to make things relatable and make them touch the person. So yeah, that's been one of my biggest success stories that I love sharing.
It's a lovely story. Thank you so much for sharing, Isabel. And thank you so much as well for all the work that you're doing. And we've had such lovely feedback as we've been talking. People are saying that you're right, children are our future, so it's important to educate. Lots of people saying you're doing a great job and what a wonderful way to teach, and some great advice. And so we're going to wrap up now, but is there anything that you'd like to say before we go, Isabel?
I just want to say that, initiatives like yours are amazing, because what you're providing is a platform to be heard and to share our message and to network and connect people. I really believe that's one key element of how we can change things around. And if anybody wants to get involved or learn more about what we do in our work, please just reach out. Don't be shy. I believe I'm a very open approachable person, so just reach out, come. And yeah, we're always looking for volunteers and people that want to get involved, so in any form. It doesn't have to be on the ground with us, but maybe if you're overseas and you feel like you've got some spare time and you'd like to get involved, just send a message and I'm sure we can find a way of how we can collaborate.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate it. And if you are watching back home, please do like, comment and share. The more people who see this, the more awareness that we can raise. And if you are watching and you've enjoyed the show, please do give us a like and a follow on Facebook. Again, the more people that join us, the more awareness we can raise for conservation work. And also head over to Isabel's Earth Awareness Facebook page and give them a like, follow and share. And again,
Thank you.
more people, more awareness, and the more great work that people can continue to do. But for me, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you, everyone, for your kind comments as we've been talking. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Super. Thank you so very much. And yeah, see and hear from you. Bye.
Bye.